I saw that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please report to your seats.
Seriously?
So what's the update?
Mr. George, whenever you're ready, sir. Thank you, Mr. George. We are now reconvening in open session. We are going to consider action item on closed session items. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to appoint Kelly Isaac to the position of elementary school assistant principal and to approve her as a Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System appraiser for 2017-18.
Okay. Motion. We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mr. George. Do we have any discussion? Can I get a show of hands? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to review item 9A. Dr. Dupree.
All right, first item on number 1 is board policy, and we have two policies, CDA and CLB. Any questions or comments on the policies?
Mrs. James.
Okay, so Mr. Rosenthal and I have reviewed all of the policies that are on this agenda, and I thought we had included it, in CDA local, but we need to get in there a provision for this policy and the investment strategy associated with it, which is going to be the exhibit, to be reviewed annually. Mr. Bassett already brings that to us annually, but we want to get it in the policy. And I thought it was
actually there.
Is it? But it didn't. Okay. Is it there, Mrs. Martinez?
It's at the bottom of page 4 of 4 on the redlined version under annual review. And it says the board shall review this investment policy and the district's investment strategy not less than annually, and shall document its review in writing, which shall include whether any changes were made to either the investment policy or investment strategy. And we, as we reviewed it, we could add reviewed annually by way of a board adopted resolution as that written documentation piece to clarify written documentation further.
Okay, so yes, so that's what was my concern, that it needed to be in the policy that it was going to be brought to the board for approval, because this is just saying it's going to be reviewed, but it doesn't say that it's going to be reviewed by the board, or there's no like circle end of the circle.
Right, we can add that clarification, reviewed annually by way of a board adopted resolution.
Well, see, what do we usually do? Is it a resolution?
It's not typically whenever, no, I think it is a resolution that we bring in August, whenever it's the same time that we bring the brokers and other things like that. It's usually done at that time. Yeah, Dina's given me the yes sign, so it is a resolution that we do.
It's actually a legal policy, I think. Is the board required to do that legally?
It's in CDA legal. I think that the board does have to do that. Is that right, Dina? Yes. So, but it is something we do in August.
Okay, so it's already in there.
I think so.
All right, so let's just double check that before next time. That's all, I just wanted to be sure it was
Yes, ma'am.
noted someplace.
Is that it, Mrs. James? Mrs. Tossan, did you have a question, or?
I just wanted to thank Mrs. James and Mr. Rosenthal again for working on this, because I don't have any questions, because y'all do such a good job, and we appreciate that.
Yes, we do appreciate that. Are we moving on to policy CLB, or was that covered in this last one? It was covered. Okay. On to, let's see here, 9A2, review proposed annual audit engagement letter with Whitley Penn for fiscal year 2017-18. Any questions? All right. 9A3, review minutes from previous meetings. Any questions? Thank you. Review item 9B1, review proposed revisions to local board policy, CLE, CO, and EC. Mrs. James, did we have any?
No, we don't. We are very pleased with these policies. We think they're all good, and we made some additional edits on EC local, which we'd invite you to look at, which we're very happy about. And no, we're good with these.
Good. Any other questions? Moving on to review item 9B2, review proposed memorandum of understanding authorizing Fort Bend ISD to participate in Houston Community College's priority student onboarding, admissions, and registration project. Any questions or discussion? Mr. George?
So explain to me, what does this exactly mean? Is that these students are going to be automatically accepted at HCC? What does that exactly mean?
Well, basically, as we move into this partnership with Houston Community College, what they've done is they've developed a system where they've streamlined the acceptance, the application process, so that the information is pre-populated and it removes the barriers that students would have with the application process. That's number one. In doing so, we would also have access to Houston Community College advisors to come in and assist with planning based on readiness level. So students who are on track, who need advisement for four-year college track, we would work through that process. We would work through a process where if there were kids within a range that may not be TSI ready, they would work to assist us with getting those students ready so that we could remove that TSI barrier. And then, as I mentioned during the CCR report, that we would also be identifying students who have been traditionally underrepresented and looking at giving them advisement or counsel on what are our paths to the workforce that would result in industry certification, and also developing opportunities for them to become TSI ready. So I think it's a tiered approach with a partnership with Houston Community College. We have a similar partnership with Wharton County Junior College, but this extends the opportunities to a much broader group of students and a wider range. Because Wharton Junior College is limited just to the schools that are within that junior college, I guess, zone or area, if you will.
Sure. So, and also, is these students are already, is they participating on PSOR program? Are they already in it, or?
No, this would be a new partnership and a new MOU with HCC. They are currently partnering with A-Leaf ISD and have been doing so for a year, and it's increased, you know, the numbers that we showed on that color chart.
Sure.
It's served to hook in some, as I said, underrepresented students that we wouldn't traditionally, you know, capture in that clearinghouse number.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Thank you, Mrs. Saavedra. Moving on to review 9C1A, reviewing proposed purchase exceeding $50,000. Oscar?
Yes, sir. The first bid package that we have is bid package 22, which is renovations at Mission Glen, Walker Station, Garcia Middle School, and Hodges Bend Middle School. And what we're looking for here is an agreement with prime contractors in the amount of $9,308,000. And as a project, this has a surplus of $528,150. One of the items at Mission Glen Elementary School, or actually a couple of items that are not included in the original scope, is the low slope roofing, and what that pertained to was some canopies that had just some small leaks. Those were addressed by Fort Bend ISD facilities, so we did not include that. And then the second was it called for electrical disconnect replacement at the units, but the actual units, mechanical units, the actual units did not have disconnects, so there were none to replace. But the new units that we're putting in there will have disconnects installed because that's code now. And so if you put a unit, you have to have a disconnect within reach. And so that will be installed. But that was the reason that those two are not included in the package. The other had to do with Walker Station Elementary School, and it talked about replacement of decentralized cooling. And there's actually no decentralized cooling within that school, and so it's not required, so we're not doing that scope of work. The remainder of the work is included.
Thank you, sir. Now moving on to, let's see here. Mr. George, you have a question? Go ahead, sir.
The question on the bid number 25, package 25, talking about the new security vestibules and facility upgrades at multiple campuses. This has been
Mr. George, we're not there just yet, sir.
Oh, we are not there?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Do we have any other questions by chance? It's okay. All right. Moving on to review item 9CB, review proposed use of 2014 bond program contingency, please. Oh, number 2. Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. Review item 9C2, construction of 2014 bond program bid package number 25.
Yes, sir. This particular package is for Lakeview Elementary School, Sugar Mill Elementary School, Sugarland Middle School, Jimmy Clemston Agricultural Center, and M.R. Wood Learning Center. And we're looking at a contract with e-contractors in the amount of $6,280,493. Overall, as a package, this particular one is a surplus of $88,663. But one of the main issues that I want to speak to here is actually Lakeview. Lakeview had quite a bit of scope. It was replacement of mechanical fan coils, single-ply membrane roofing, access control, security vestibule, emergency generator, exterior lighting, some panel board replacements, replacement of windows and doors, replacement of retractable bleachers, and wall painting and coating. When we started designing and looking at this project, it was immediately recognized that the budget that was set for this was not going to be able to cover all of this work. But we went ahead and asked the architect to go ahead and design to it so that we would be able to know what that cost may be. And we went ahead and did that, and also went ahead and bid it out. Well, you know, once we received bids, the bids for this particular project came in $1,200,000 over budget. And by the time this all occurred, we had already started a facilities assessment for bond 2018, of which Lakeview Elementary is included in that facilities assessment. We don't have the final facilities condition index yet, but from what I'm seeing so far, it is going to be on the tipping point of the possibility of some really major renovations or actually possible replacement and rebuilding. One of the main reasons for that is that because of the age of that building, the floor-to-ceiling heights appear to be a problem. And when you go in to do a major renovation and you don't have the right clearances on the floor-to-ceiling height, the mechanical systems just do not fit. And so we're wanting to go ahead and make sure before we expend any additional dollars on that campus that we have a good understanding of what we can and can't do with the old bones that are there. So with that said, what we are including at this time, because even with going out for another bond, I mean, this school has to operate for the next few years. So what we feel needs to happen on there is we do need to replace mechanical fan coils and rooftop units, and we do need to go ahead and replace the roofing system with some single ply, and then we're going to be doing some patching and all so that we can get beyond the next couple of 2 to 3 years. But we did not feel that it was prudent to go ahead and come to you all and ask for additional money to cover the remainder of the work, because we feel that once we get the facilities assessment in place and once we find out where we're going to lead with this either renovation or new school or whatever we're going to be doing there, we would be tearing out work that we just went ahead and put into it. So for that reason, I know that we come for you all and ask for money for a lot of projects, but this particular one, we feel that it's prudent to not come forth at this time and ask for that money. And then the only others on here that they had, there was a shortage at the Jimmy Clanstown Ag Center on that particular one, and once again, as we started design on this particular one, we could tell that the monies that were budgeted, once again, for whatever reason, were just not going to be sufficient to do the work. But in this particular case, we do feel that we should include, and it's an additional $236,375 to be able to get this work done at the barn. And then the last one on there is the M.R. Wood Center for Learning. M.R. Wood had roof replacement in 2004. The roof on that school, if you've looked at it, is really not a commercial type of roof. It's actually a shingle roof that went in. One of the things that occurred with that, we started experiencing some leaks, and one of the things that we found was that for whatever reason, when that roof went in, the span on center for the roof joist are further apart than what they should be, and so it caused some cupping. And because of the cupping, it went ahead, and that's how we were getting some of the leaks. So what facilities has done at this point, because we were experiencing a lot of leaks, we've actually narrowed that down quite a bit. But they went in and actually did some bracing, from underneath to go ahead and get the roof going. And then this particular 2014 bond will do some additional work on that roof. It is not a complete replacement, but it is some additional work to mitigate any further damage at this time. Yes.
Question. Oh, sorry.
Do you have a question, Ms. Haliger?
I'm tired. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for bearing with me.
Yes, ma'am.
So as you're describing the repairs that are needed, I'm okay with the pad. I just want to make sure, how do we ensure that the next person that we do the repairs it's doing the repairs to code? Because apparently whoever put the roof on the first place didn't do it to the 30-year code standards, right? So, and is there any repercussion?
And I just want to add to that, I'm pretty sure a tree fell on that building in 2013 or 14, and that roof got repaired at that time too. Like a whole giant tree crashed into it. Yeah.
So I'm concerned with the type of vendors and whatnot that we're picking to do our repairs on this roof.
Yes, I honestly cannot speak to what occurred in 2004, but I can assure you that with the work that we're taking forward, we're bringing in the right people to go ahead and do the work correctly.
So to that point then, who's inspecting it? Because I would assume there was some type of inspection that was done prior times, both on installation and tree repair. So when we do this one, who is actually going to be doing? Is there someone within us that is responsible or accountable for doing that kind of inspection?
Yes, ma'am. The professional consultants that work for the architect are the ones that do the inspections on any of that installation.
Do we, Mr. Perez, do we have any internal systems that would verify that it was good, clean work, competent work, to back up the contractor for the architect?
Well, yes, sir. The project managers, also go and they visit daily and they look at it. But ultimately, they are the design professionals. They hold the license, and so they're really the ones that have to sign off on that.
Okay. Any more questions?
So if that's the case, can we go back to the person who signed off on it the last time? And for a level of accountability? Because if they're licensed, as you're saying, and they signed off on the repairs, and you're telling me now that the repairs were incorrect or the installation was done incorrectly, there should be some level of warranty or something like that when it comes to that installation and repair. I don't know. You all school me on this one.
And the answer, yes, ma'am. We can go back and look at that and see, but at this point, these repairs need to be done to just maintain what we have to do. But yes, we definitely go back and investigate that.
So I definitely get that, but we're not paying money for it, right?
I'm sorry?
We're paying money for it.
That's
out of our
correct.
bond, right?
That is correct.
So how can we recover some of those dollars based on the licenses and the warranty that was provided earlier on those repairs and installation? That's what I'm asking. I understand we have to move forward with this, but there should be some level of recoverability here. Did I make up that word? I did.
Mr. President, did I understand you to say that the existing roof structure rafters are spaced a little far apart? So are you stating that there's a problem with those rafters?
Yes, sir. Based on the cupping that is occurring on the roof, yes, I would say that there is.
Okay, but at the time, that's in the city of Sugar Land, is it not?
That is correct.
So I think we just have to be careful to make sure if something was permitted in the city of the Sugar Land and inspected by city inspectors, if it met code at that time. I don't know when M.R. Wood was built, but so we just have to be careful before we just say the previous guy did it wrong. I mean, he probably worked with what was there, and now that's another problem. But to your question, Mrs. Haliger, if we discover a construction defect or a design defect, then we can go back on the architect of record or the general contractor. But sometimes it gets hard to do that 13, 14 years later, especially when there's been virtually a complete turnover of the staff, and which is another reason why it's important to keep your superintendent for 10 years. Okay, because, go ahead.
So yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Rice, and thank you for bringing that up and for your industry knowledge. I just have to just do remember, though, in my time on the board, which has been in the last 6 years, a massive oak tree fell on that school, and I think it was shortly after Dr. Dupree came to work here, and a good portion of the roof was caved in. I do not know if that was repaired. I do not know, well, I know it was repaired, but I do not know what was involved in the repair. But I know it was more than some shingles flew away in a wind.
We can do
Well,
some, I'm sorry.
I was just going to, before we start casting stones about the work that was done, we're having an anecdotal conversation about that. And if you want to get into it further, you should call for like an exhaustive engineering report. Otherwise, we may be libeling somebody's work without really knowing what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. Haley, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to respond, thank you, Jim, Mr. Rice, for your input there. I definitely agree, if we, I guess based on how it was delivered, that there was something that was incorrectly done. That was based on what I was going off. And I do understand that codes do change as the years pass. So I would expect then if it was a code issue, then or a difference of a code now, that it would be presented a little differently versus just that it was just incorrect. I mean, that's just how I would, approach that one.
Thank you for that feedback. This building, I believe, was built in 2006 or 2007. It's not an old building, so we should be able to go back and look at the history, some of the repair history over the last 10 years or so, and do a little analysis and provide a little more insight to the board on what's happened.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh. So you're going to provide us an update on that?
Yes, with a little history, kind of the repair history and that kind of thing on that roof.
I think we'd all appreciate that. Any more comments or questions? Mrs. James?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. And I just want to bring up a little bit about Lakeview. So thank you, Mr. Perez, for giving us that information. So what I understood is that between your team's looks at the building there, the architect that was working on this bid package 25, and then the facilities, during the facilities assessment process, we figured out that the total scope of work that needs to be done at Lakeview is probably more than is allowed for certainly in this bid package. And then we didn't feel like putting more money into it immediately was going to get us a lot of value out, because we have, again, a big more extensive work to be done. Do you think is that a fair summary?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, because we don't have all of the information really required to go beyond, what we're doing now. Because as I said, if we go into a major mechanical replacement and we don't have those floor-to-ceiling clearances that we need, then you're expending money that you're going to end up either having to fur down somewhere to be able to get ductwork through, or you're going to have to place more equipment on the roof that's going to require additional engineering study to see if it can support it. So there's just a lot of unknowns that I did not feel comfortable in coming to the board and saying, yeah, let's do this work, and then we'll look at what happens later. I'd like to see what we find from that assessment, and then come back with a plan that we could go ahead and look at funding possibly with the next bond.
Okay, so what I'm getting is that we need Lakeview as a school and as a center for children, but we're going to hold on the putting funds into it until we get a good plan to fix all the parts of it that need to be fixed in a reasonable and viable way. Is that what I'm understanding? That is correct, and we are expending all of the dollars that were in Bond 2014 by doing the two scopes of work, which was the air handlers and some roof work. Yeah, and I know the staff and the students over there will be really pleased with those upgrades, because I've been texted by teachers as water was pouring in from the roof because of trying to clean things, somebody power washing up there or during the rain and all that. So I know these things really need to be done, and I'm glad you guys are going to address them. I just notice on here that the things that we're not doing really are a lot of safety items. And so it concerns me. I recognize that I recognize our funding, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'm comfortable with this path forward, but I also feel that the students and staff at Lakeview are important, and for them to, they need their security vestibule just like all the rest of our campuses, and their emergency generator and all these other items on here that are really safety items. So I guess my hope is that after we figure out the plan forward for that facility, that Lakeview doesn't come in phase 3 of our next bond package, but that it comes in phase 1, so it can be one of the first projects out of the gate, so we can get these safety things in place for that community.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think that's my comment on Lakeview, and I'd like to also just continue on talking about the Jimmy Clemstein Ag Center. Again, so I had asked a question about drainage and grading there, because I know that had been an issue in the past. I actually thought that, again, since I'd been on this board, we'd done a project that involved grading and drainage over there, and we'd replaced some pens, I thought. And I could be confusing that with a different ag center. But I asked about that because I've heard a lot of stories about the way the drains are, the mud over there, and et cetera. And there's been some concern about safety of animals.
Yes, ma'am, and there has been work that has been done there in the past, but it's being a barn. There's always going to be some drainage issues, so there's always room for improvement, because just as the animals walk and waller and everything, on any given day that you go, there's going to be some issue. The other thing is that based on what occurred at the other barn, we're going to also be going in there and looking at addressing the perimeter. Right now, if you go and you look, one of the things that is a little different here is that there's a lot of grass that's grown up against the fence and some dirt. And so that you don't have the same situation that you have in the other barn, but there is, we definitely do need to go ahead and address and be proactive so that we don't end up with a situation at this barn as we did in the others. So there will be some work that we'll have to do there.
Okay, so there's two separate things there. One is the protection from the wild animals that, like we had over at, I guess, at Ronnie Davis, and then the other is just the grading and drainage. And again, it's good and I'm glad we're putting some money into these facilities, but by the same token, if we're going to put money in, then I'd rather that we do it right so it's a good investment for the community rather than have to be coming back repeatedly. And I'm not sure exactly. It sounds like there's some different things being addressed here, but I do believe even in the last 3 years, because I remember Mr. Berdine was on the board, I think, when we talked about it at one point. So.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, when I came on board in May, there was ongoing work and there were repairs done on the pens. The difference between these two barns and the new one that we built is that the new one is all concrete. So everywhere that the animals are housed is all concrete, whereas these are not. And so, you can go in there, you can level, and then, within a few weeks, you have some areas that'll hold water. So it's a constant, updating that needs to be done on that and maintenance.
Yeah, so either a good maintenance schedule or an upgrade to the flooring or to the surface so that we don't have the problem. So, okay, well, thank you for your consideration of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. James. On to item 9C1A3, construction of the 2014 bond program bid package number 26.
Yes, sir. And, once again, this one is an agreement that we're looking for with e-contractors in the amount of $1,462,000. And in this particular one, there is an overall shortage. These are for Jones Elementary, Ridgegate Elementary, Missouri City, and Progressive High School. And one of the main ones that has quite a bit of overrun is Progressive. And the main reason for this is that it was cost increase that we feel attributed to the mechanical, electrical, and the PA systems, but it also, in this particular one, it does appear that, post-Harvey might have gotten to us a little bit on these bids. But it wasn't budgeted where it needed to be, but then with that increase, it also threw it quite a bit over. And then we had also the Missouri City Middle School. That particular one was also higher, and we, once again feel that it was just because that's part of that package, that it was that post-Harvey bidding that kind of hurt us.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. On to the next item, 9C1B, review proposed use of 2014 bond program contingency.
Yes, sir. And in this particular contingency funds, we're actually looking at a net proposed activity of a negative 6314. So we're bringing in dollars, we're taking out dollars, and overall it's reducing it by $63,000 at this point, which still leaves us as of February 2018 with the $15,156,31. And we, as I said earlier, the only packages that we have left are the ones that we'll be bringing in March, and we feel good. Everything's bid, and so we feel we're doing well.
Thank you very much. On to 9C1C, review the proposed amendments to the project budget for the roofing work at Fleming Elementary School.
Yes, sir. And this particular one is one where we had quite a bit of roof work, and as what we found out with the roof work, the way it was proposed before, was that the monies that were allotted were not necessarily for a roof system. The monies, when they talked about roof repair, they didn't look at the total roof repair. When you're replacing a roof, you have, flashings, you have internal drains. There's a lot of components associated with a roof. So as we got into the project, we found some areas that had, some rusted out metal that we needed to replace. So we've gone as far as we could with the contingency that we had available. And so we're at a point where we need $17,721 to go ahead and be able to complete this project. And so that's why we're coming to you, because we have to actually go to program contingency. Everything that y'all have approved, we've now expended, and so we need an additional $1721 to finish the project. And so that's why we're bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. I appreciate that. On to 9C1D, review the proposed dedication of easement for water facilities agreement with the City of Sugar Land for the James Reese Center and Technical Education Center.
And this is just the water easement that will go all around the facility. And the reason for that is that we will have the ability to, if we have a problem, we can bring water from either direction. And but it requires an easement, and that's all that we're asking for.
Thank you, sir. On to 9C2, review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000, and that is in regards to the property insurance renewal. Who's that, Mr. Bassett?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions? I apologize. Mrs. James?
Can you, I've tried to read the memo and understand it, but could you explain what this is? So this is like a insurance premium.
Right. This is our large property casualty insurance premium. That covers our properties, and so we have an increase in premium of 8%, but we have a increase of coverage, including the facilities that we've added since the last time renewed, of just about 7.9%. And so I thought the increase in premiums would actually be a little bit higher than that. So I think we ended up pretty good overall. But this is our major property casualty insurance that covers our district for wind and hail and all that kind of thing.
Tornadoes,
Yes.
floods.
Well, that covers for floods.
Oh, it doesn't cover us for floods,
Okay,
that's right.
that's right.
Because floods are different. Okay, but,
Okay.
thank you.
Was this, I'm sorry, Mrs. Tossian, go ahead, I apologize. Was this the price increase just due to inflation, or is that something to do with Harvey, or?
I mean, I think Harvey had something to do with it, but I guess given that we have this many more facilities added on and some more coverage, it really is a push practically.
Yeah.
And so I think we ended up very, very good in comparison to where we could have been.
Yeah, I agree. Mrs. Tossian, you good? Any other questions? On to 9C2. Actually, we just finished that. Next, we have audience items. Is anyone in the audience tonight that would like to speak?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I got to do it.
Mrs. Tossian made a motion to adjourn. Mrs. James seconded that. But I wanted to make just a few quick comments here. I'm sorry to keep you all late. One is I wanted to thank Mrs. Tossian for allowing me the opportunity to act in the president role this evening. That means a lot to me. Had a great time doing it. Thank you. And the second thing is, you know, we get a chance to travel as a board, and we get a chance to be on a big stage because we have a phenomenal district. And everywhere we go, we have people ask, what do you do and how do you do it? And we have such a competent staff that I think all of us are proud to stand up and share as much information as we can. And you really don't have an idea of how far-reaching your hard work really goes. And I'm always seem to be amazed by people coming up and saying, you know what, thank you for that. That started a conversation, or that changed the way in which we see things. So I just wanted to say compliment to staff, and I appreciate you. It's nationwide. People recognize our good work. So thank you once again. Have a good night.
I move to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned. I already had that.
You didn't want.